You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our Sex Podcast Collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Welcome back to Private Parts Unknown, a podcast about love and sexuality around the world. I'm Courtney Kocak, and we are in the middle of what might be the hottest summer on record. So I am dropping an extra hot and extra sexy special for all my horny privates. And if you don't know, that is the story of my Tokyo happy ending massage. So if you are new here, a few years ago, we took an epic bucket list trip to Tokyo for the podcast. We did a ton of original interviews. It was amazing. And then a couple years ago, I wrote about it for Cosmo. The essay went viral, and I included it as an audio essay at the end of episode 103 with more snippets from the Tokyo series. Plus, of course, there's the original Tokyo series. If you want to go back to 2020, you can find that. You can listen to all the full interviews. But I wanted to drop this audio essay on the feed just to live as a quickie, okay? So I am sharing it with you today as a standalone. Try not to drive your car off the road if you are driving, or break a plate if you are washing dishes. Okay, you have been officially warned. This is bubble bath listening. You might even want to hop in bed and grab your vibrator. Honestly, no judgment. I would be honored if you jerked off to my jerk off story. So, without further ado, here we go. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. This is the story of my Tokyo happy ending massage. Fireworks, fireworks, fireworks. So I recently wrote about this for Cosmo, and then I was like, damn, I gotta make this an audio version for the privates. This is pretty sexy. This is pretty spicy. So today, I want to share it with you. There was a full moon outside the hotel window. My best friend was downstairs in the lobby, and a strange man was jerking me off with a vibrator. No, this wasn't a fantasy. This was my real life. We didn't go to Tokyo with the intention of being sex tourists, but that's what happened. 30 minutes earlier, I'd rushed up the elevator and through the hall to meet my erotic masseuse. As I approached our hotel room door, I was greeted by a gorgeous 20-something Japanese man with flawless skin holding a gift bag. We exchanged hellos in each other's language and then giggling went inside. I was buzzing at an 11, a little drunk and electric with anticipation coursing through my body. My nervous energy bubbled over as I fumbled with the key card. So how did I get here, on the verge of my first happy ending massage? Well, in February 2020, on the cusp of a certain global pandemic, before people had ever thought of calling a pandemic a pandemi or a panini, my best friend and I went to Tokyo, Japan for our comedy sex travel podcast, Private Parts Unknown. You're listening to it, baby. And at the end of our last interview for this trip with Hiroko Amai, a very cool 30-something local reporter and producer, we innocently asked our standard final question. Anything else? This just happens to be the best, most underrated interview question of all time, BTW. And what happened next is Exhibit A for why. We expected her to answer with maybe like a sightseeing recommendation or some wacky anime dessert. But Hiroko said, the one thing I want you guys to try is a male prostitute. Just to clarify, by prostitute, she was referring to erotic masseuses that didn't engage in insertion, but instead performed services like licking, kissing, and fingering, in case you were looking for a more technical definition. See, she'd interviewed one of the top erotic masseuses for work, and she'd been tempted to experiment with the experience, but never did. I think she was excited about having us be the guinea pigs. We laughed initially, although you can hear on the tape that we were quickly intrigued by the suggestion. Earlier in the interview, Hiroko described the levels of sex and intimacy work in Japan, from faux boyfriend or faux girlfriend companionship available at host and hostess clubs up to soaplands, which are the closest thing to American-style brothels. Hiroko explained that one level below soaplands is a service called Delivery Health, which is basically like Postmates for ladies who want to get off. She told us thousands of guys auditioned to work at one of the delivery health agencies, like American Idol for gigolos. Those accepted were specially trained with fingering techniques that titillate women without penetration. Yes, Tokyo is a truly magical place. What's funny is that when Hiroko first told us about the service, I'd pictured older women clientele in my mind. I didn't see myself as a potential customer. But when she suggested we try it, it felt like a dare in the best way possible. I'm in a monogamous long-term relationship. Now he's my fiance, but he was my live-in boyfriend at the time. So I needed permission. I felt emboldened by my plausible excuse. I mean, I was in Tokyo to do research for my sex podcast, after all. I didn't want to pay for a long-distance call. Plus, I wanted to give him time to think about it, so I sent him a text. Hey, baby, somebody we interviewed recommended we get an erotic massage, no sex, obs. But I just wanted to ask if that's cool with you first. Let me know. Kissy face. Nervous and excited, butterflies danced in my stomach while I waited for a response, but I didn't have to wait long. 4 minutes later, I saw those gray dots appear, and he replied, LOL, yeah, no prob. Kissy face. Yes, my jaw dropped. What an awesome response. Strangely, it made me want to marry him. My boyfriend had always seemed like he would be a good husband, but this was a defining moment that seriously reinforced his life partner potential. My co-host and I went to a Denny's-like Japanese restaurant with Hiroko, where she ordered our masseuses for later that night. Mine had a crown next to his name on the website, indicating he was a top provider, and I couldn't wait to find out what that felt like in practice. As we dined, we discussed our pregame plans, which found us bar hopping around Shinjuku and eventually landing at an S&M club in Ginza called Blackheart, as one does, where we completely lost track of time thanks to some very attentive hostesses who never let our glasses run empty. I guess time flies when you're pre-gaming your erotic massage. We got a cab and rushed back to our hotel. I scampered up the elevator and through the hall to meet my erotic masseuse. The anticipation was wild. Once we got to the bed in my hotel room, I just stood there in silence for a second. I'd never done this before, so I tried to ask how the whole thing worked. But beyond saying hi, we didn't have many words in common. Awkward giggles ensued as I got out my phone and opened Google Translate to tap out, I've never done this before. You show me what to do. He took over from there, ushering me to the shower. Apparently, it's customary for both parties to shower beforehand and sometimes after too, which I totally approve of. And while he took his turn, I found out that unassuming little gift bag had been loaded with an arsenal of sex toys that were now carefully placed on the bed alongside a bottle of massage oil and a bottle of lube. After his shower, it was finally time for the main event. He oiled me up as I lay face down on the bed, gave me a very short massage with oil, and then moved on to the erotic portion. I recognized some of the expert fingering, butterfly kissing, and sucking techniques that Hiroko had mentioned. Then he moved on to the vibrators, cycling through a few different options from his bag of tricks. My masseuse had a boner, which I took as a compliment. But ever the professional, he kept the focus on me. Though I did feel like maybe I could have had a freebie if I wanted it. But I didn't need it because it was thrilling just to have a stranger's hands on my body. I felt like I was living a fantasy. I didn't come during the actual massage. Ironically, I was too excited. But instead, I felt a sexy euphoria that started with my masseuse's first touch and lasted well after I landed back in Los Angeles and resumed my regular life. It was like edging for a full week. Well worth the 11,000 yen, aka just over $100 at the time. Usually, my best friend and I inevitably wind up fighting at the end of our travels together, but this trip was different. There was no room for negativity after a happy ending. The next day, we were literally skipping through Tokyo on the way to the airport. We were beside ourselves, barely able to believe our good fortune, exclaiming, "How great was that? I have never felt like my pleasure was such a priority. Can you believe my partner let me do this?" We were ecstatic. So would I recommend a friend get a happy ending massage? A million times, yes. We were joking that we might start leading tours to Tokyo so more women could give it a try. It was an experience that changed me on multiple levels. To have my sexual satisfaction taken so seriously, literally like it was a job, felt very empowering as a woman. That's not how our culture is typically oriented. We take for granted that men are desirous and deserving of pleasure, but we don't tend to let women have that same sexual purchasing power. And oh my God, what a huge turn on. It was a different kind of release than I get from a typical romantic exchange. And it expanded my mind to aspects of open relationships that I hadn't considered before. I was blown away by how cool my boyfriend was about allowing me to have this experience inside our up till now monogamous relationship. And it helped me realize that dalliances like this can lend a little extra spice to a long-term relationship without actually going full poly. I was so horny on the plane ride home, cramped in my economy seat on an international flight, that I tried to watch porn on my phone covertly. It was a threesome scenario, a couple hiring a lady sex worker in Amsterdam. I straddled a ridge on my seat and rocked myself into it hard. A couple Chinese schoolboys across the aisle burst out laughing. They were onto me, clowning on me and pointing me out to their friends. Not even that could stop my grinding. I was so turned on. It was obvious that what happens in Tokyo doesn't necessarily stay in Tokyo. That extra erotic euphoria was a persistent stowaway. As soon as my boyfriend picked me up from the airport in LA, I mauled him with kisses. I couldn't stop touching him in the car. And when we got home, I could hardly wait to rip his clothes off and fuck. I mean, we're both busy, and we had gotten in a little bit of a rut of not prioritizing sex before the trip. But my happy ending reinvigorated us both. Suffice it to say, I was a satisfied customer, and I can't wait to go back to Tokyo. In the meantime, it's kind of a bummer that erotic massages for women are harder to find in America, although perhaps it's just a matter of learning the lingo. Several months after we got back from our trip, we interviewed writer and sex work activist Selena the Stripper, who told us that you can find similar services in Los Angeles under the name Yoni Massage. Maybe it's time I ask my boyfriend if I can do some more research. Okay, that was pretty epic, right? And it was so interesting because I saw Selena the Stripper post about their happy ending massage on the plane ride back. That was a very eventful plane ride. And then we had them on the podcast a few months later, and Selena's Yoni massage actually helped them heal some sexual trauma. So here's a little preview.
So we did a call, and he started off by asking me to tune into my body and asked how I felt, what were all of the parts of me feeling. And I just had a moment where I was like, I just feel a lot of pain. My knees hurt, my ankles hurt, my back was tight. we just had a moment where we were acknowledging the amount of pain that my body was in that I wasn't acknowledging before, and I just started crying. Like, I was like, "Oh my god,"
Oh.
I can't believe that I'm just, like, crying, like, first time I get on this call with this person, I'm just here to get jerked off, like, kinda, but then I was like, "Okay, like, maybe there's some, like, healing stuff that we can do."
So check out Selena's episode 31 entitled Sex Work, White Supremacy, and Happy Ending Massages for that whole conversation. And episode 103 has the Cliffs Notes from our Tokyo, Japan tour. But I highly recommend listening to the full series if you have time. And all those links are in the episode description. So have fun with that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Private Parts Unknown. I hope you had a real good time, if you know what I mean. Stay tuned right here because I've got another sexy episode coming your way next week. For the latest episodes, look down and make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast player now. On a lot of apps, it's like a follow or a subscribe button. On Spotify, it's like a follow and a little bell button. To stay in touch between episodes, follow me at Courtney Kocak, that is Kocak, on Instagram and Twitter. And follow the show at Private Parts Unknown on Instagram and at Private Parts on Twitter. And hey, baby, I am shamelessly trying to hit the top 1% on OnlyFans always and forever. So if you're like, interested in a Playboy-styled peek behind the podcast, you can subscribe to my OnlyFans account. It is a very horny way to help support the show. I love my horn dogs, and you can do that over at onlyfans.com/CocoPeepShow. Again, onlyfans.com/CocoPeepShow. I promise you, we have fun over there. And of course, subscribe to our newsletter. It is privatepartsunknown.substack.com. There is a link for that in the episode description. And you can subscribe to the Private Parts Unknown YouTube channel for the video version of a bunch of episodes. The audio episodes also automatically update over there now. So you can head on over to youtube.com/privatepartsunknown and hit the subscribe button. That is youtube.com/privatepartsunknown. And check out my other podcasts for more of my audio creations. I have The Bleeders about book writing and publishing, and Podcast Bestie, which is a best friend to podcasters trying to grow and monetize their shows. If you are a writer and you not only want to generate a ton of new material, but get it published, like this viral essay that you just heard, which was published by Cosmo for their Confesse series, I have got the writing intensive of your dreams going down in September. I know, because it was the writing intensive of my dreams. That's how I came up with it. It's called Back to School Pitch Party. I am wrapping up the first cohort this month, and oh my gosh, my students have been wildly productive. I am so proud of them. So if you are interested in joining in the fun, head on over to my website. It is CourtneyKocak.com/teaching. Again, Courtney Kocak, my last name is KOCAK.com/teaching. And I've got a special code for you. You can use code PRIVATE to save $100. So again, code PRIVATE for $100 off. I would love to have you join my publishing cult. I'm trying to start a cult, to be honest. Shout out to Amy Rausch for the bomb-ass theme music. For more info about Amy and her music, check out amyrausch.com. That is Amy, RAASCH.com. This episode was mixed by my beloved audio guy, Michael Castaneda of Plastic Audio. And after enjoying this content, could we ask you for a quick favor? Just go to ratethispodcast.com/private and give us a 5-star rating and review. I am trying to hit number 1 on the sexuality charts before I go out with a book proposal related to this project. So you could help me do that. If you are listening on Spotify, just go to our page, click the little 3 dots, I guess it's called like a hamburger sign, then click Rate Show and click all 5 stars. And I want to give a quick shout out to my new CastBox listeners. If you are listening on CastBox, you can just rate and review the show right in the app. I would so appreciate that. And no matter where you are listening, you can rate and review the podcast just by going to ratethispodcast.com/private and leaving a 5-star rating and review. And seriously, it helps out so much. Like, the optics as I'm trying to get a publisher are chef's kiss. So thank you in advance. And hey, there is one more way you can help support the show. We are now on the Fountain app. So if you are listening on Fountain or another V4V platform and you get value from this show, you can support us by sending a boostagram. You can even send a comment along with your boost. And I have to say, those are my favorite messages to get because they come with a little bit of Bitcoin. And seriously, I would love to hear, whether it's in a review or a boostagram or however you want to get in touch. I would love to hear what you thought about this episode. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Love you, privates.